Become that which you are. This comes to us from Friedrich Nietzsche, and the full quote goes, "What does your conscience say you should do? You should become that which you are." And this was a quote at the time that affected me profoundly, and I took from it, "Become who you are." But I just, within a few minutes ago, was reminded of the full quote. And I remembered how powerful it is to listen to our conscience. And I've talked about that many of times, but I think it would be fruitful again to go over the topic and to realize that to become who we really are, we just have to listen to our conscience. And I think I can only speak for myself, but I think there is a voice inside of my head that doesn't tell me things I want to hear, that tells me to do hard things, that tells me to get out of my comfort zone, to grow, to do the tasks which I am meant to do. And I believe listening to it would make me a better man, would make me more of a benefit to society. And I think everyone has this. And I think if you don't spend enough time in solitude, if you don't spend enough time tuning into this voice, you, one, may think you don't have one, and you too may never be graced with the privilege of hearing it, of realizing what it is, to realizing that it is God, and it is that it is the thing trying to make you the best version of yourself. Socrates talked about how he had, I think the Greeks called it a daimyo, and how this, I just recently read Plato's Apology, and he was talking about how this voice never told him what to do, but it told him what not to do. And for that reason, he could not, for that reason, that's why he didn't escape his death. That's why he didn't choose exile over death. And that's why he chose not to plead to the jury of Athens. Instead, he spoke his truth and proclaimed that he was not the one on trial, and that the Athenians were the ones on trial because they were potentially going to condemn the wisest, justest man in Athens to death for being unjust. And he truly believed it was better to be wronged than to do wrong. So he cared not for the trial. And he felt as if he wasn't even on trial. He felt as if the Athenians were on trial. And all he did was listen to his conscience. And who's to say we would still talk about Socrates to this day if he didn't live up to his principles? Because, I mean, we might know of Socrates, but maybe Plato would have never been so inspired to choose Socrates as the main character of so many dialogues, of the wise teacher in so many of his dialogues. Maybe Plato would not have chosen to spoke through Socrates if Socrates did not stand on his principles and did not teach in such a way to inspire Plato in such a way. And I think it's safe to say that Socrates became who he was. He stood for stuff and he died for it. And what better than that? And that's the thing with this consciousness, the still small voice, I like to call it. It never tells you things of convenience. It often tells you things that are very inconvenient. And one of the ideas that I like for virtue is that virtue is never convenient. Virtue is one, a verb, as Aristotle puts it, and virtue is often, if always, not convenient. And the consciousness, the still small voice, is often not convenient. And it's not always easy. as I'm saying, well, as I just basically stated. But, personally, I struggle, especially as of late, listening to my conscience because it's hard and it's not convenient. And when you believe that you have not received fruits for the work that you have done, it can be hard to continue to listen to the voice. But I think at the end of the day, you have to remind yourself, what else is more fruitful than becoming who you are? What is a better use of your time than unlocking your full potential, which is nothing more than becoming your true self? I just recently read Walden, by Henry David Thoreau for the first time, and it re-sparked it re-sparked something in me that I lost. And I think it was meant to be that I read Walden when I read it, because I bought it a while ago because I heard it was a very good book, and I just got into reading Ralph Waldo Emerson, which is also very good. Self-reliance is probably one of my favorite essays ever. And so yeah, I was like, oh, let me give Walden a try, and I read a page, maybe two, and I was like, not really feeling it, and I put the book down. And then I don't remember when that was exactly, but I'd say at least 6 months, if not a year ago. And I recently picked it up, and I mean, it's probably one of the best books I've ever read, and it relit the spark in me of becoming the best version of myself. And he has a line in there that says we should be. I'm gonna butcher it, but it said something along the lines is even in our worst hours, or like the goal of life is to live up to our highest, or to like our most divine hour of thought. He says that even in the details, we should live up to that most highest state of our thought, of our being, of what we think we can become. He claims that we need to live up to that. And to me, that's listening to the conscience. That's becoming who you are. And I think everyone has the conscience of a divine being inside of them. And that's why I think, I kind of am Nietzschean in a certain degree of thinking that the individual can create their own morality, even though I believe in Christian morality and Nietzsche didn't. I believe my daimyo, is fixed in Christian ethics. And when I feel my own sense of morality and my own what I believe is virtue, I see it in Christianity almost to the T. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong just for the fact that I don't think Nietzsche lacked solitude or contemplation, and he disagreed with Christian morality. I guess his daimyo disagreed. So I don't really know if we all can just trust the daimyo and morality as Nietzsche believed, but I do think there's something profound for it. And maybe for few select individuals, as Nietzsche says, I guess, they can listen to the daimyo. I forget who said it, but I remember hearing once, somebody said they were questioning if people can really listen to their divine voice, and then they brought up how Socrates was a rare case because his daimyo was so pure and so bright. It's a hard topic for me to talk about because I speak as if I think we all should be individualists. I speak as if I think we should be. I speak as if I feel like I'm a liberal. With free individual freedom, doing as you please, this, that, and the other. But I'm really not, and I only, I don't know. I guess I nitpick, but I think from individual experience, mine hasn't led me in the direction that so many others have. So I feel like I have a distorted view, and I can only speak on experience and feel like they are misguided or lying, because mine has never misguided or lied to me. But I see it apparently lie and misguide so many others. But without getting too deep into all that, I do think it's valuable to just become who we are, to trust thyself, to find your truth and speak it. But you have to be unbiased enough to realize that you're biased, and to realize that you need to view things objectively. You know, the Bible in Proverbs talks about how the wise love to be rebuked and the fools hate it. You need to love to be questioned, love to be rebuked, love to be ostracized, loved to be told that you are wrong, loved so you can see the perspective, accept the critique, hold it as an opinion, and then if it doesn't stand up to testing, discard it. But that's what the wise do. The fools instantly rebuke their criticism. The wise hold it as truth until they can prove it as falsehood. And I think if we all did that, we could live through individual codes and listening to the still small voice. But whether we can get into a society that can do that, that is another question. And I truly, maybe maybe I'm cynical on this front, but I don't think we can arrive to that point, because I've seen too many people fall, myself included. And I don't know if any of us is worthy of that voice. I don't know if any of us are worthy enough to become who we truly are. But I think we have to try. And that's the goal of life, is trying as hard as you can, putting as much hours and as much energy, and making all the sacrifices that you believe you have to become that. And if you meet your end of your days and you don't think you've made it, you think you've fallen short of the ideal you were striving for, at least you can be happy that you went for it and you tried to become who you are. And in trying to become who you are, in a certain degree, you became who you are. That's really all I have to say on that point. But on the point of Nietzsche, I was recently watching a 9 minute, all like nine types of political philosophy with my buddy, and the Nietzschean came up, and he kept looking at me, like proclaiming that I was a Nietzschean, and I protested. I did not consider myself one. But as I think and as I speak on this video, as I think more, I think I kind of am. But at the same time, I don't, because I don't believe in so many of what Nietzsche taught. And yeah, but I do think he has great lines for people, for the individuals who are trying to become something greater. Like, I forget exactly how it goes, but like he talks about how the one who soars will look small to the people who can't fly. You know, what does your conscience say you should do? You should become who you are. I mean, Nietzsche has great quotes for the individual trying to become the best version of himself, trying to become excellent. And I think in true Nietzschean fashion, I that's another thing why I thought I was Nietzschean, because in true Nietzschean fashion, I detest Nietzschean philosophy, even though I accept so many of its points, which to me is almost Nietzschean in itself. Um, but that's beside the point. The point is to trust yourself, to become who you are, and be willing to die for it, because death is not an evil, but not becoming who you are is the greatest evil.